Okay, Chaver, let's get started. This week's Parshat is Parshat Mishpatim. Now, we have a lot to discuss tonight. If we don't finish tonight, we'll finish either Shabbat or Sunday, but God willing, we'll finish tonight. There's two sections really that I want to discuss tonight in Mishpatim that are connected. But before we begin, we have to understand, but just in a general sense, very general sense, what are Mishpatim? Laws, good. But what are Mishpatim in the context of mitzvot? There's different kinds of mitzvot, right? We have Chukim and Mishpatim, two general classes of mitzvot. What are Mishpatim? So Mishpatim are generally looked at as like more logical things. Just for example, civil law. Okay, what does that mean? Monetary law. That's what Mishpatim are. And that's what the Parshat predominantly discusses. Mishpatim, civil law, monetary law. Let's go through a few examples, what it discusses so we understand the category. Mishpatim, the first example is Eved Ivri. Okay, you buy a slave that's Jewish. How are you supposed to treat him? What do you give him? What does he give you? Civil law. Let me move on and we talk about damages. A Jew damages another Jew. There's certain payments that he has to make. There's actually 5 types of payments. Physical damages. We continue and we talk about Shomrim. That's also discussed here. What's Shomrim? One second. What's Shomrim? Guards, guardians. There's different types of guards. There's guards that you can give an object to watch who is not paid. That's called a Shomer Chinam, not paid watchman. There's watchmen that are paid. That's called Shomer Sachar. There's a Socher who is a renter, and there's a Shoel who's a borrower. These are all civil law, right? Every country has laws like this. Every country needs to have laws like this because in order for a country to function properly, you need civil, monetary, normal laws. That's what Mishpatim really discusses. Clear? That's what Mishpatim really discusses. It's like, what did you want to say? Okay, fine. Good. Now, the question that we're going to have to tie back to, which I'm not going to get into right now, but after we go through, I want to first go through a few other series of questions from the beginning. It's important just to note, guys, focus in. What did we have at the end of Yitro? What did we have at the end? We had, what was the discussion of Yitro? No, after the judges. After the judges, we had one of the most famous. We gave it to Rabbi Sova. What was it? We gave it to Rabbi Sova on Shabbat. What was it? Matan Torah. Right? We spoke about the Aseret HaDibrot. That was Yitro. At the end of Mishpatim, we have another discussion of Matan Torah. Look at the end of Mishpatim. Actually, it talks about the days before Matan Torah, but there's... Okay. And in between, we have this discussion of Mishpatim. So the discussion that I'd like to just preempt, I'm not going to get into the details because we have to see the Rashis as we go through. When was Mishpatim actually given to the Jewish people? What would you naturally say? When was it given? When the whole Torah was given. Okay, the whole Torah was given. Mishpatim was also given. Now that sounds to be a very logical thing to say, and the first Rashi seems to say that, as we'll see. But as I'm going to show you, it would appear that that's not so simple at all. Okay? It might have been given before Matan Torah. Okay? I'm going to show you proofs, both ways. I'm going to show you. You'll see Rashi himself says differently something else. We'll have to see. Good. So you're right. Excellent. David's on the ball. There were mitzvot that were given before Matan Torah. There were mitzvot given in a place called Mara, and there were mitzvot that were Sheva mitzvot b'nei Noach given to the entire world, not specifically to Jewish people, even to the Goyim. Exactly. Now let's look at Rashi a little bit. Just keep that in mind. This idea: when was Mishpatim given? Was it before Matan Torah? After Matan Torah? I want to go through Rashi. I want to show you a Rashi Masechet Gitin, and then I'd like to show you also the end of the parasha, and then B'ezrat Hashem we'll tie this all together. So look at the pasuk. The first pasuk in the Torah tells us in this parasha. It says, you can open up if you want. Page 416, beginning of Parshat Mishpatim. Ve'ela Mishpatim asher tasim lefnehem. These are the Mishpatim, the ordinances, says Rashi, says Art Scroll, the laws. Asher tasim lefnehem, that you shall place in front of them. In front of who?
Jewish people.
Jewish people. I'm going to show you there's 2 ways to read the pasuk. Okay, ready? Let's see Rashi now what he says. first Rashi. I'm going to speak outside what Rashi says, the first Rashi. Rashi says, when it says the word ve'ele, vav, what does vav do in the Torah?
Continuation.
Vav is vav achibur. What does vav achibur mean? It connects things. As Rashi says, it's mosif. It adds. And Rashi says, Kol makom shenamar ele, if it would have just said ele, these, so pasalet harishonim, it cancels out or disconnects from the beginning. Ve'ele, but when it says and these, it's the first Rashi, mosif al harishonim, it adds on to the earlier ones. Ma harishonim, this is a midrash tanchuma. Ma harishonim is Sinai, just as the earlier ones were from Sinai. Af elu misinai, these were also from Sinai. Now just stop for a second, Chevra. What are the rishonim? What are the earlier mitzvot that we're talking about? Aseret HaDibrot, maybe the 10 Commandments. So just as Aseret HaDibrot was Sinai, what does that mean? Given at Sinai. On the day the Torah was given, let's say the 6th of Sivan. Also, what was given at Sinai? Mishpatim, civil law. All of these laws. Good? So far, so good. Now, if you looked at that straight, when was Mishpatim given? At Matan Torah. Yeah, it's very straight. No complications. Continues Rashi, V'lama nismecha parashat dinin leparashat mizbeach. Rashi says, if you look, the end of Yitro talks about the mizbeach. Okay, it talks about the mizbeach, how it's supposed to be made. Mizbeach was the altar. The altar that they brought korbanot on in the Mishkan, in the Beit HaMikdash, it talks about that. Why is Mishpatim written after the parasha of Mizbeach? What is the connection, says Rashi, between Mizbeach and Mishpatim? Lomar lecha, says Rashi, it teaches you Shetasim Sanhedrin Etzel HaMikdash, that the Sanhedrin should be put next to Mikdash. Now, what is Mikdash first? Mikdash is the house of Hashem. When it was in the times of the Midbar, that was the Mishkan. After they got into Eretz Yisrael, eventually they built Beit HaMikdash. Hold on, Rega, just listen. I'm not going to leave you hanging. Don't worry, Yosef. Don't worry. I'll explain. Rashi says, why is the parasha of Mishpatim, which talks about judging, Mishpatim, the rules, judgment, why is that placed near the Mizbeach? To teach you the Sanhedrin should be put near the Mikdash. Now, what is Sanhedrin? So there's 3 levels of Jewish courts. We started Masechet Sanhedrin. It's supposed to be as our flesh lema for Jacob, actually. Anyone who wants to join, you could join. But there's a very fundamental ruling like this. You have the lowest level courts, which are 3 judges. They judge, what kind of cases do they judge? Monetary cases. Money, civil law, monetary law. 3 judges. You have the next level courts, which is 23 judges. 23 judges could judge capital cases, meaning they could judge cases where somebody might be chayav mita. That's considered the lower Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin Tana. That's like the lower level. But then you have the great Sanhedrin, we always call Sanhedrin, which is 71 Supreme Court. Sanhedrin Gdola, which is the highest level of courts. It was one court system situated in the Beit HaMikdash. In the Beit HaMikdash.
70.
Yeah, 71. 71. Actually, there is a Tana who holds 70. It's a machloket. Welcome. No. The 71, but it is a machloket. One of the Tanaim do say 70. But let's just say 71. So the highest level court is called Sanhedrin Gdola, or we call Sanhedrin, 71 judges. Says Rashi, the reason that the Torah puts the discussion of Mizbeach next to the discussion of Mishpatim, which talks about laws and courts, is because it teaches you that the Sanhedrin needs to be placed near the Mikdash, which is that's the reality. By the way, that is the halacha.
Yeah, but
the halacha is the big Sanhedrin of 71 was situated in the Beit HaMikdash. Okay. Now Yosef's asking, which is the question I was going to ask. This is a good question. Okay, that's what the Torah is teaching us. But what is the lesson that teaches us? Why is it important for the Sanhedrin Hagdolah, the highest level of Jewish courts, to be situated near Beit HaMikdash?
To judge correctly and to have a support
influence that they get.
What are you saying?
to be next to it, to judge correctly. Don't be biased.
If they're nearby, so then they'll judge correctly? Or they'll be scared by the Beit HaMikdash?
No, have a kedusha.
Have kedusha. I'll just tell you a couple answers. What do you want to say? Yeah, what do you want to say?
The effect of the place will affect them for good.
Okay, I hear that.
Like, הקדוש ברוך הוא told to Moshe Rabbeinu, מה נורא המקום הזה, right? So there is effect for the place.
Beautiful. Yeah, okay, so Matan suggesting, maybe the idea is that it's such a holy place, it will affect mashpia on the Sanhedrin, and they'll be able to judge in the best possible way. Nice. I saw another pshat. I'll just tell you. At the end of today, God willing, we'll say a different pshat. But I saw another pshat is that the Kohanim and Leviim were serving in the Beit HaMikdash. They always had many questions. So in Avodah, it's complicated. There's a lot of questions. So they have the Sanhedrin to ask questions to. That's wonderful. Okay, but let me point something out to you. Rashi switches. He says, why was the Sanhedrin near the Mizbeach? Look at the Rashi. Why was it near the Mizbeach? Because it teaches you that the Sanhedrin needs to be near the Mikdash. It doesn't say near the Mizbeach. Some Sfarim say Mizbeach, but the way we have in front of us is near the Mikdash. Something important to have the big Sanhedrin near the Mikdash. So this question number one. Why was it important? What is the lesson here the Torah is teaching us that the Sanhedrin, the highest level of Jewish courts of adjudication, needs to be near Beit HaMikdash, near the Mishkan? Question number one. Let's continue in Rashi. Now you said when we read the pasuk Asher Tasim Lefneim in front of the Jewish people. Rashi shows us there's actually two ways to understand this pasuk. Asher Tasim Lefneim, that you shall place in front of them. Okay, these are the laws you shall place in front of them. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. Yosef, you're gonna love this. Hashem said to Moshe, Lo ta'ale al da'atcha lomar, don't let it enter your mind to say, Eshana lahem aperek, I'll teach them the chapter. I'll teach them the halacha one time. V'halacha bet o gimel pamim, or 2 or 3 times. Until it's fluent in their mouth. So don't think you could just teach it a few times and then they'll be able to say it and that's enough. But I don't have to bother myself to teach them the reasons and the explanations behind it. Don't say that. Therefore the Torah says, no, you have to place it in front of them. What does it mean, place it in front of them? Kishulchan ha'aruch, like a set table, it's set in front of everyone to eat. What does Yosef do before the Friday night meal? He sets up a beautiful spread. He doesn't just set the food out, everyone go take food. He sets it up beautifully. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is telling to Moshe Rabbeinu, Ela Mishpatim asher tasim lifneihem. Not only do you have to teach it to them so they remember it and it's fluent by them, but you have to, in a silver platter, asher tasim lifneihem. Make it understandable. Explain to them the reasons. Now the way we just read, according to this Rashi, Ela Mishpatim asher tasim lifneihem means HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Moshe, teach it clearly with their explanations to the Jewish people. So lifneihem is in front of the Jewish people. That's like we originally thought. Correct? Good. Continues Rashi, and this is actually based on a Gemara in Gittin I'm going to show you in a minute. Lifneihem, in front of them, velo lifnei goyim. This is a fascinating halacha. Halacha is, and this is a different way to read the pasuk. Ela mishpatim asher tasim lifneihem does not mean teach the Torah to the Jewish people. This is a different way to read. Now listen to this. Ela mishpatim asher tasim lifneihem means if you have a court case that you need resolved and you need to go to court, go in front of them, lifneihem, in front of them. Who's in front of them? In front of a Jewish court. Says Rashi, I'll show you the Gemara in a moment. Velo lifnei goyim. Don't go in front of a non-Jewish court. So this is a different way to read the pasuk altogether. These are the laws that should be placed in front of them. It means if you have a mishpat, you have a court case that needs to be resolved, go in front of them. What do you mean in front of them? A Jewish court. Go to the Sanhedrin or a Jewish court. But don't go in front of a non-Jewish court. Why? Let's continue in Rashi. Even if you know that in this regard they judge like Jewish courts. Let's say we know the court in America, their laws of rentals are exactly like the rules of the Torah. So you'll say, okay, I'll go in front of that court because they're going to paskin like din Torah. Even so, you're not supposed to go in front of the non-Jewish court. Don't go in front of the non-Jewish courts. Because someone that brings the laws of Jews, means you have a court case for Jews, in front of non-Jewish courts, mechalel et Hashem, it desecrates Hashem's name, chilul Hashem, umiaker shem avodah zarah, and it elevates, it gives honor to the name of avodah zarah, lachshiva, to give it credit. Shene'emar, like the pasuk says, towards the end of Devarim, it says, Ki lo kitzurenu tzuram, our rock is not like their rock, meaning Hashem is not like Lahavdil avodah zarah, ve'oivenu pelilim. Now, oivenu pelilim means our enemies judge. So what is the comparison between Hashem and avodah zarah and our enemies judging? Kishe'oivenu pelilim, if the enemies, the goyim, are judging us, so what you're essentially doing is you're elevating their gods, their avodah zarah, and you're doing chilul Hashem. Okay, clear?
But that's not for today.
Hold on. What's the pshat here exactly? Let's just stop for a second. Let's try to understand what Rashi's saying. Rashi's saying, Ve'ela mishpatim asher tasim lifneim. It doesn't mean the first pshat like we said, which is when you teach the Jews Torah, lifneihem, you should explain it to them with the reason. Lifneihem is not in front of the Jews. This is a different pshat. Lifneihem means when you have a court case, where should you go? Lifneihem. What's lifneihem? In front of a Jewish court, not in front of a non-Jewish court. And he continues, we're going to see the Gemara says this in Gittin Pechet Amud Bet. Why? Because if you take Jewish cases in front of a non-Jewish court, you are desecrating Hashem, you're doing Chilul Hashem, and you're elevating Avodah Zarah. Now, what's the why? The question we have to understand is, why is that true? Let's say we know, okay, we live in Miami, and we know the local court, they judge, let's see, even like Rashi, they judge like Din Torah even, right? Or even not Din Torah, but they judge, fine. And we take our court case there. How are we being Mishabech? How are we praising Avodah Zarah? How is that Chilul Hashem? So, just to understand, back in the day for sure, perhaps today too, there was a religious element to courts. Meaning, people in general are much more religious. So maybe in the court when you walked in, there was a big cross. Oh, okay, so then I could understand. You're giving credit. But let's say it's a secular court even. They're not religious. Says Rashi, it sounds like from Rashi, if you go to a non-Jewish court, it is Chilul Hashem, and you're giving credit to Avodah Zarah.
Maybe they're talking about in Israel.
It's Bechlal, this is Bechlal. So we have to
You
understand.
have to go to a court.
So that's a different story. Sometimes you have to, but let's say you don't have to. But the point is, the question we have to understand is, what is the connection between going to a non-Jewish court and creating Chilul Hashem? How are you elevating Avodah Zarah by going to a non-Jewish court?
You're not following.
What's the connection?
Because maybe you don't follow the laws that Hashem gave us.
No, but we just said, Rashi says, even if they judge like Torah law.
Because the judge, a goy
They're not
judge.
Jewish.
Okay, but they're judging like Torah law even. It's Chilul Hashem.
So what? Goy judge? I actually heard a story about a rabbi that said to, I think Rabbi Mishpatim, that told the people in the city that they were complaining that he's going to give them degrees. He told him, it's not so bad. Just bribe him and he will be fine. So, if you bribe them, they
To
always...
understand. Okay, fine. But what's the pshat?
You're not going to bribe people.
So we have two questions, Bekitzer. Let's just speak out the two questions. Question number one. Question number one we're saying is, what is the message of the Sanhedrin being put near the Mikdash? Question one.
Because a lot of things going on.
Okay, that was one answer. We're going to give another answer. Question number two. Why is it a Chilul Hashem when you bring Jewish court cases to a non-Jewish court? Why is that Chilul Hashem? Desecrating Hashem.
Maybe the place, it doesn't have Kedusha like when Sanhedrin should be close to Beit HaMikdash.
David's unbelievable. I want to understand. David, I think David is the best Talmud over here so far. This guy, he is focused.
Yeah, that's
focused energy.
The place is not holy because it doesn't give you.
This is not going. I'm a judge.
Let's see. I think there's something to talk about. Let's see. Okay, before we continue, Chevra, I want to show you, flip to the end of the Parsha, page 440, okay? Flip to 440.
It's a long Parsha.
It is a long Parsha. At the end of the Parsha, like I told you, we're going to again discuss Matan Torah. But actually, it's the days before Matan Torah. So look at Perek Chav Dalet. It's page 440. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Now the Sfarim speak out, this is the before Matan Torah. Let's say Matan Torah is the 6th of Sivan. So this is the 3rd day, the 4th day of Sivan. That's what days we're in right now. Look at the Psukim. I want to read through a few verses here. El Moshe Amar, it's Perek Chav Dalet Pasuk Aleph. El Moshe Amar to Moshe, Hashem said, Alei El Hashem, ascend to Hashem, Ata ve'Aaron, Nadav ve'Avihu, v'shiv'im miziknei Yisrael. You, Aharon, Nadav and Avihu, that's the sons of Aaron, and the 70 Ziknei Yisrael. Who are the 70 Ziknei Yisrael? Him and them are the Sanhedrin, right? Okay. Exactly. Moshe plus 70. It's Moshe plus 70, which is 71, is Sanhedrin. Ve'ishtach merachok, and bow from afar. V'nigash Moshe levado, pasuk bet. V'nigash Moshe levado el Hashem, and Moshe stood or approached. V'nigash Moshe levado el Hashem. Moshe himself approached Hashem. V'hem lo yigashu, but they would not approach Hashem. V'ha'am lo ya'alu imo, and the people would not stand with him. Vayavo Moshe vayasaper lahem et kol. Now listen to these words. Moshe came. Vayasaper lahem. He told to the Jewish people, the nation, it called divrei Hashem, all the words of Hashem. So this was the rules about Matan Torah, the borders, not to approach, fine. Ve'et kol ha-mishpatim, and he told them all the mishpatim. This is before Matan Torah, before the 6th of Sivan. The Mishpatim, Vaya'an kol ha'am kol echad, the nation responded in one voice. Vayomer, they said, kol ha'dvarim asher diber Hashem na'aseh. Whatever Hashem says, we will do. Vayichtov Moshe et kol divrei Hashem. Moshe wrote down all the words of Hashem. Vayashkem ba'boker. And it goes on to say that they had a process before Matan Torah. Fine. He told them the Mishpatim, and then he wrote down divrei Hashem. What are we talking about? This is before Matan Torah. So comes Rashi, and Rashi tells us there were certain mitzvot Moshe told the Jewish people before Matan Torah. Now listen to Rashi, a series of things. Rashi says, Et kol ha-mishpatim, sheva mitzvot shenitztavu b'nei Noach. So first thing was the 7 Noachide laws. We know there's 7 laws that were commanded to the entire world. The Shabbat, okay, Shabbat. One second, that's later. This is before the 6th of Sivan. This is before Matan Torah. It's before Matan Torah. The Kibud Avva'im, honoring. That's what I'm saying. It says Ein Muktam Ma'achar. These are out of order. The Kibud Avva'im, and honoring father and mother. Upara Duma. Okay, that's an interesting thing. V'dinin shenitnu lahem b'mara. The dinim, the rules that were given in Mara. So, before Matan Torah, Moshe told over to the Jewish people a series of things, including the 7 Noachide laws, Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach, and the dinim that were given in Mara. Mara is a location that the Jews were in before they got to Har Sinai. Okay? The next pasuk says, "Vayichtov Moshe." Moshe wrote down Divrei Hashem. What did he write down? Mi Breshit va'ad Matan Torah. He wrote down from Breshit until Matan Torah. The Katav mitzvot shenitztavu b'Mara, and he wrote down the mitzvot that were commanded in Mara. Now, what is this Mara? What are we talking about? So, if you look back, you don't have to. If you want, you could. It's back on page 382 in Parshat B'Shalach. If you want to look, hot in here, man. 382. The air going, it's hot. 382. It's okay, I guess. Let's go. It's winter. 382. The Psukim tell us the Jews traveled for 3 days. and there was no water, so they complained. And the water was bitter, and the people complained against Moshe. Moshe cried, and he cried out to Hashem, showed him a tree, threw it into the water became sweet. That's the story here. So 382, the Pasuk says, in Pasuk Chafei, the end of the Pasuk, Sham Sam Lo Chok u'Mishpat. In Marah, that was this location, this is before Matan Torah, Moshe gave them Chok u'Mishpat. Okay, he gave them Chok. What's Chok? It's a type of mitzvot. Chok is the ones we don't really understand. And Mishpat. Okay? Rashi says, what is Chok u'Mishpat? B'Marah natan, it's Pasuk Chafei. Rashi says, B'Marah natan lahem miktzat parshiyot shel Torah sheyit'asku bahem. In Marah, Moshe gave them some of the sections of the Torah so they should be involved. This is before Matan Torah. Shabbat, Paraduma, Vidinin. Again, Dinin. What is Dinin? Dinin is civil law, monetary law. So what are we seeing already, guys? I'm just trying to show you. Already, not even talking a few days before Matan Torah. This is a month before Matan Torah, 2 months before, whatever it is. Actually, it says here.
The laws was
yeah, they already had some command of civil law, of monetary law in Marah, and it was written, and it was given and written down even before Matan Torah. And now we have Rashi in the beginning of Mishpatim that says, Ma rishonim misinai, af elu misinai. So what's Eila? Mishpatim. So it seems a little bit confusing now. Was these civil monetary laws given before Matan Torah? Or were they given after Matan Torah? Or at Matan Torah? You understand? Okay, so now look at this Gemara. There's a Gemara Masechet Gittin. This is a very interesting story over here. Things have to make sense. What's the storyline exactly? I'm still figuring it out myself, Chavra. I'm just telling you. This is unbelievable. The Gemara tells us as follows.
No,
the Torah is hard, man. The Torah is very hard. This is a Gemara in Masechet Gittin. The Gemara says as follows. Abaye found Rav Yosef. There was a story, Abaye found Rav Yosef. And Rav Yosef was sitting and dealing with a certain case of Gittin. Okay, he was judging a certain case of Gittin. He lived in Bavel, and he was judging a certain case with Gittin regarding divorce contract. So Abai turned to Rav Yosef and he said, I don't understand. We are ordinary judges. We're hedyotot. We're ordinary judges, and we're not allowed to adjudicate. We're not allowed to judge these kinds of cases. How do I know that? Because Rabbi Tarfon said, Kol makom she'ata motzei aguriyot shel ovdei kochavim. Wherever you find courts of goyim, this is like Rashi was telling us. Even though those courts of Goyim keep the laws of Jews, you're not allowed to use that court. Why? Like it says, that who should you give the court, the cases to? In Lifneihem. Who's Lifneihem? The Jewish courts. Lifneihem, velo lifnei ovdei kochavim. Not in front of non-Jewish courts. That's where Rashi got what he said in the beginning of Mishpatim from. Now, I'm not going to continue. There's a story there. We're going to leave that off for now. Comes along Rashi. This is Rashi in Masechet Gittin. Listen to the words of Rashi. Who are Lifneihem? Ka'i ashiv'im zkenim. This is talking about the 70 elders, meaning Ela Mishpatim Asher Tasim Lifneihem, in front of who? In front of Sanhedrin. Who are the Sanhedrin? Shiv'im Zkenim, the 70 elders. Where are those 70 elders mentioned? Where are they mentioned in Mishpatim?
Where did you put in basically the Mikdash?
Where were they mentioned? Where does it mention the 7 Shiv'im Zkenim? Now in the beginning of the Parsha,
when Moshe and Aaron,
it mentions them at the end of the parsha. I showed it to you. Chavdal and Aleph. It mentions the Shiv'im Zkenim would go up the mountain with you. So listen to what Rashi, he makes a little bit of a, listen to this confusing thing. It says like this. She'alu imo lahar, they went up with Moshe to the mountain, kodem Matan Torah, which was before Matan Torah. Kidechtiv, like it says, this pasuk, at the end of Mishpatim. Ve'el Moshe amar alei elai, and he said over there, the Shiv'im Zkenim, Now says Rashi. So it comes out like this. Ela mishpatim asher tasim lefneihem means you shall bring your court cases in front of them, means in front of Jewish courts, in front of the Shivim Zkenim. Shivim Zkenim we're talking about are mentioned at the end of the Parsha, which is when Moshe goes up the mountain, which is before Matan Torah. Okay? Ve'af al pi, says Rashi, even though shenichtiva parasha zo le'achar Matan Torah, this parasha Mishpatim, civil monetary law, it was written after Matan Torah, but Kodem Matan Torah ne'emra. It was said to the Jewish people before Matan Torah. So it was the Mishpatim, the civil monetary laws was told to the Jewish people before Matan Torah, which is this, who said here. It was written after Matan Torah.
It was given after.
And then he goes on to explain. It was said over to the Jewish people before Matan Torah. And it was written after Matan Torah. So let's just tie it all together so we have a little bit of a picture now how this works. We said certain dinim were taught in Mara. Now when was Mara? That was month before. Let's say month before, whatever it was. We're also saying Marishonim mi Sinai af Ela mi Sinai, that the Mishpatim were given at Sinai. So which one is it? So the way that Rashi seems to be learning here is that it's true. Mishpatim, I guess you'd say in a general sense, was said over to the Jewish people when? Before Matan Torah.
Verbally.
Now verbally. In Maram, some of it was said, perhaps some was said even after, but it was said before Matan. When was it written? After Matan Torah. Beautiful. So now we have that worked out. Just to clarify that for a second, what's the pshat? It said, so I was speaking to a guy in the yeshiva, Shmuel Silber, a big Talmud Chacham. Remember Shmuel Silber? He used to come around here. Silber. He was suggesting an idea which makes sense to me. Perhaps, as Rashi says in Mara, they were given the general theme, the general principle, the general ideas. So they could be involved in learning it and studying it and learn about it, but not all the details. At Matan Torah, they were told all the details. So that could be also the distinction that we're laying out over here. Okay, so now we have this clear. So Parshat Mishpatim was actually, or the general monetary laws, civil laws, was told to the Jewish people before Matan Torah, was written after Matan Torah. Beautiful, excellent, we got that clear. Now let's go back to our questions. We had two questions.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, sure.
When before Matan Torah given to Jewish people, only Jewish people or everybody?
Mishpatim is for Jewish people. Yeah. There is. Oh wow! We're almost out of time.
Wait.
Okay, fine. We're gonna have to stop because it's almost Arvit. But let's just finish up with the two questions that we said. So we left off. Now we're coming up. Kitzer is Mishpatim was told to the Jewish people before Matan Torah, and it was written after Matan Torah. You can explain the general idea was given before, the details written after. Fine. With that all in mind, now let's focus back on our questions. Question one we said was, the Torah is teaching us in Mishpatim that the Sanhedrin needs to be put near the Mikdash, near the Beit HaMikdash, near the Mishkan. So we have to understand what is the symbolism in regards to that. Question number two, we're saying is that you're not supposed to bring cases in front of non-Jewish courts because to do so would be a Chilul Hashem. So we have to understand why is that really considered a Chilul Hashem. We're going to have to stop here. B'ezrat Hashem, these questions we'll get to on Shabbat. We'll speak about this. Okay, Baruch Hashem, we got through half.
They both have the same
Shabbat is going to be very hard.
No.
There's a